Hello and welcome back to Jarrett's House. So today we're going to be learning about the exact costs that go into driving. A lot of people say, you know, they're going to get their license, going to keep always putting that out, and that's great. But I think a lot of the time people don't actually know the costs associated with it. And I don't know if it's because I'm just a very pedantic person. I don't like it when people say, oh, it's just going to be expensive or it's going to cost a lot of money. I'm very I like to know the specifics, the exact costs that are involved so that I can properly prepare for it. So that's the purpose of this video. I'm going to be explaining every single cost involved, and averages will be done to a year. And so that's going from literally from getting your provisional license, theory, lessons, test, cost of the test, cost of hiring the car, all of that through to buying the car, deciding the car. I'm going to cover whether it's better to get a manual automatic license, in my opinion, diesel or petrol, all the costs associated with a car for the first year I'm going to be going through today. So all I ask of you is that you like and subscribe and comment if I miss anything out. If you disagree with anything that I've said, let me know in your comments. Let me know and share this to your friends as well. A lot of people are trying to get into driving, but a lot of people don't know the costs associated with it. So do help them out by help them out by helping me out. Help them out by helping me out. Help everyone out. I don't know. So the purpose of this video is to work out if you can afford being able to drive, and there's nothing wrong with not being able to afford it, or it's not uncommon to not be able to afford it, because it is very expensive. Now, in order to work out if you can afford something, you need to first understand what it means to afford something. So the definition of afford is to be able to pay for it. So we're going to come back to this and we'll start off with the definition, and we'll see if we can actually afford to get a car, considering our circumstances and considering all the costs associated. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get the license, but before that you need to get your provisional license. This just means that this is when you have your green card, which just allows you to start learning lessons, etc, etc. So to get your provisional license, this costs £34. There's not much you have to do to get your provisional license. You literally just apply online, you send in your documents and the address that you've lived for minimum 3 years, I believe. You send that in and you get it back. I can't remember how long it takes. I feel like it took a long time, but I can't remember the exact time it took. So now, cool, you've got your provisional license, which is just a good form of ID in general. Cool, so we've got our provisional license. Now what you want to do is you want to do your theory test. To prepare for your theory test, all you need is the DVSA test kit, which includes your hazard perception and the theory test kit. So that's literally the right inside of it. And then hazard perception is like the videos and stuff like that. So you'll need that. I think, so you can buy the book, but I did mine via apps. I got the official DVSA apps. All this is, mine was $9.99, but I see it's gone down now. It's $6.99 for the 2020 edition. So obviously you want to get the most recent edition. I don't know if much has changed since when I did it, but yeah, $6.99. On the note of preparing for the theory test, I would advise at least 2 weeks, but minimum 4 days. I wouldn't cut it to 4 days. If I was being responsible, I wouldn't ideally cut it to 4 days, but I know a lot of people like to cram. I didn't personally like it. I know I was just having such a great time that summer. I'll do it. I'll get around to it. But obviously, so I booked my theory test 2 weeks in advance. And so I had 2 weeks to learn it, but I was just distracted, clearly having time. I'm I don't know. I don't even know what I was doing, but wasting time. And obviously the test was coming, and it took me 4 days to learn anything, but I didn't enjoy learning it. Well, obviously you're not going to enjoy learning it, but I didn't enjoy the pressure that I put myself under unnecessarily, because I only had 4 days to read loads of just loads and loads of text that isn't the most interesting. It's quite insightful actually, but it's not particularly the most fun thing to do, and I had to do it all in 4 days because I weren't about to waste my money that I had paid for the theory test. So on that note as well, I would also recommend booking your theory test before you've actually started revising the content. If you keep saying, oh yeah, I need to do my theory, you know, if I'm a driver test, you know, a driving test, it's just a thing that you need to do. The clock is ticking. There's no rush, but the clock is ticking, and will you actually get around to it unless you put that financial attachment to it, unless you invest that. I know a lot of the time, sometimes we have to actually put the money down to motivate us to do it. So that's why I recommend booking your theory test before you've actually started learning. It's not a hard test to do. It's just then you just need to dedicate the time. Now we've sat the test, hooray, we've got our theory test license, I don't know, qualification, I don't know what it's called, certificate. certificate. That makes sense. So we've got our theory, we've done our theory test, we've passed our theory test. Cool. You now have 2 years that you need to pass your driving test. So I know I'm kind of jumping back and forth, but I do need to mention this as well. Do not start this journey unless you can forecast the next 2 years. Like, don't do your theory test unless you can forecast your next 2 years that you're gonna have it done. Now, obviously life comes about and sometimes we can plan for things, but then they don't end up happening. But try and forecast your next 2 years to see whether you are going to get the driving license in this time. And this isn't just lucid dreaming and saying, yeah, I'm gonna get my driving license, I'm gonna get my driving license. It's, do you have the finances associated in order for you to actually get your license? Cool. So great. Now we've passed our theory test. It's now time to start learning how to drive. So you found a driving instructor. Unfortunately, I can't recommend how to find a driving instructor because I don't remember at all how I found mine. I don't know how I found mine, but I think people go online, but I know you have to be very cautious with finding them online, because I know a lot of driving instructors try to waste your money, try to waste your time. I've heard a lot of people talk about how when they're doing their lessons, they're just going over the same thing for the loads of lessons, and obviously a lot of driving instructors might just be doing that to take your money but not give you the service. So I'd say the best way is probably word of mouth. So if someone's recommended them, because obviously you can get a first-hand review and you can ask them of their success rate, and you can also ask your friend who's recommended them what they liked and what they didn't like about them. So I say the best way is through recommendation. So now the question is, how much does it take to do all the lessons and pass? Now, I'm gonna say it costs around £900. Now, a lot of people are shocked when I say that, but I think what a lot of other people don't realize is that because you're paying it as you go, you don't actually realize how much you're actually spending until you look back at it and it's like, oh, it was a good amount of money. But yeah, I'd say on average, it would cost about £900 because the average person takes 45 hours to pass their test, and the average lesson, I think some people pay £25 per lesson. My lessons were £20 per lesson, so £20 times the 45 lessons is literally £900. So obviously this figure's gonna vary depending on how long it actually takes you to pass. I know some people, it takes them about a year. It took me 5 months. I'm gonna say 5 months. I don't think it took me 4 months. 5 months. I know people that it's taken them 3 months. It completely varies, but in order to be fully prepared for it, it's best to, prepare for the worst case scenario and go from that. In addition to your driving lessons, you'll want to be getting as much practice as possible. So this means preferably doing lessons with a family member, parent, brother, sister, blah, blah, blah. Whoever's had their license for at least 3 years. So yeah, try and get as much practice as possible. Now I just wanted to address the whole manual versus automatic license debate, just from my perspective. So I would personally say get a manual license, and to me that's just like a no-brainer. Now I do understand why people say, oh well, automatic manual cars aren't going to be around very soon, but that's not happening within the next month or two. It's going to be a couple years until that change completely happens. So I don't understand why you would de-skill yourself by going just straight to it. Also, I think a lot of people, I think it's very common for our generation, to be honest, as well. We like quick fixes. We know that, okay, we might have the logic that, oh, I'm going to pass quicker in an automatic license, which means I'm going to save money. Or I don't think people think about it saving money, but yeah, it might be, my test might come up to cheaper because it'll be easier to learn an automatic. But people need to think more long term as well. So that, let's say £100 that you might have saved on the extra 5 lessons from doing an automatic license, because it might take you 5 lessons longer to get used to the manual, that £100 is actually gonna come back to you. You might end up losing that money later down the line because it actually becomes more expensive, because automatic cars are actually more expensive than manual cars. And I know we have our aspirations and our plan, and we plan to get the car that we desire, but with driving and cars and the costs that have to do with it, sometimes we need a car but we might not be able to afford the dream car that we want to have. So basically what I'm saying is, also manual cars are actually cheaper to buy than automatic cars. we could have like a great car now that's automatic, but we might be in a financial situation where we still need a car, but we can't necessarily afford the automatic version of that car, so it's cheaper to get the manual car. But oh wait, you can't drive it because you don't have a manual license. Sorry, forgive me. But yeah, don't de-skill yourself. Why would you de-skill yourself so early? Just like stick it through. Have a bit of patience, you know, and think long term as well. This little money that you're saving now might end up being wasted, or you might end up losing later down the line. Also, I've never actually heard anyone who has a license recommend to get an automatic license only. That's just a point, take it as you will. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I recommend having at least £500 saved before you start this whole process to getting your license. Not even just the car, because that's the car side of it is a whole nother bracket of like money pot that you should have. But I would recommend having at least £500 saved before you start your lessons. Reason being is because you can budget for your lessons to only cost £900, but it actually ends up costing more. And I say £500, but this is subject to if you have a continuous source of income. So relating it to myself, for example, I had just started, like this was when I got my first job. Hated that job. I was actually on like £5.32 an hour, and my managers, I did not like that job, but that's irrelevant. So basically what I'm saying is, at this time I was in a much different financial situation, and I didn't actually realize when my dad bought me my car, because my dad bought my first car, I didn't realize that I was going to be paying for it. Like, I didn't realize that I was going to be paying for the insurance, and I didn't realize I was going to be paying for the petrol and you know all of that. So it was like when I clocked that I was going to be paying for this, it was like, oh. But yeah, so cool, that happened, here we are. So now I realized that I had to pay for it. So this is when I was really looking for a job. This is when I went to go and secure my first job. So now I've got a job, but my driving instructor, I had a very good relationship with my driving instructor. So I remember sometimes that I might not like have been paid as what I'd expected. So I didn't have the money for him at the time to pay him, but because I had that relationship with him, he was like, oh, it's okay, you can pay me back. And also I paid in bulk as well. Paying in bulk also helps to reduce costs on lessons, because you can get like 10 lessons for X amount or whatever. But that's just a side note. But yeah, so all it meant is that because I had that relationship with him, I could pay him back. However, some driving instructors aren't going to be that lenient, and they don't owe you that as well ultimately. So just to make sure that you're prepared for all eventualities, I'd say try and have like at least £500 saved, so that you don't run out of the money that you'll need to pay for the lessons. And this is if you have a continuous source of income. If you don't have a continuous source of income, I would only recommend going for your license and starting this whole journey from theory to this is after provisional, so it's great to have provisional, that's regardless of anything, but I would only start this journey in terms of getting a theory test to getting the actual license if I had about £1,000 spare. Well, I don't want to say spare, because like a lot of people, like it's not uncommon to not have £1,000 spare, because that is quite a lot of money. But I just mean, like, say like, you know, you might have come into a bit of money, or your parents have said like, I'll give you £1,000 towards your driving test, or whatever, from whatever angle it comes from, you've got about £1,000 that you can work with. Yeah, I would have just £1,000 aside if I don't have a continuous source of income. So if I weren't going to be working, but I really wanted to get my driving license, I'd set aside £1,000 to £1,200 just to actually get the license. And the last thing on the note of lessons is don't take any gap. Now, I know being able to drive is part of procedural memory, so it's something that you just know how to do, like instinctively. Once you've learned, it just becomes second nature. However, when you're in the actual learning stages, as in you don't actually fully know how to drive, but you're learning how to drive, and then you take a big gap, you will actually be set back a lot. And what you don't realize is that you've actually wasted that money, because say you've done like 10 lessons and you take like a month gap because you didn't budget for this, you didn't plan ahead, you didn't predict how much it was going to cost, or really like deep how much it was going to cost and forecast how much it was going to cost. So now you have to take like a month or 2 months break. You lose a lot of the ground basics, and then when you do start up learning again, you have to go back to the beginning. So now what, you might have just wasted another £100. But again, you don't realize these things because you're paying as you go. You don't realize how much you've actually invested into it. So it's best to just get it over and done with in one point. This is the last thing about the lessons as well. I'd say when you're about 4 or 5 lessons in, I would actually book my test. Reason being is there's a waiting list before you can actually sit your test. You can't just book it Like, you can't just book it for tomorrow, so you have to plan it in advance. And if you only think to book your test once you've learned to drive, then you might be waiting 5 months from that point, if that makes sense. So it's either going to try and fill the gap in this time by just doing more lessons, which is great. It's always better the more practice the better, obviously, or you're going to have lost, like, you've forgotten the things that you've learned in that time. So I would say book your test like 4 or 5 lessons in, or ask your instructor if they feel like it's a good idea to book your test now in advance. So that's what I did. So by the time I had finished learning, or I was ready for the test, it was just there ready for me. Cool, so now it's the test day or test period. To do the driving test is £62 that you're going to pay on the government official website. For your test day, you're also going to probably need to hire your driving instructor's car, or you can use your own car. And for test day, that was £75, which included the hire of his car, and we did a 1-hour practice test before then. Great, we've done our test now, we've passed our test. So this is if we've passed our test. We've now spent £1,100 and 99 pence, and this is if we passed first time. So that's everything that we've discussed now, from your provisional license all the way to your test day. We've now spent just over £1,000. However, the reality of the situation is that a lot of people fail. So obviously there's going to be more costs incurred if you do fail. Now, I would say if you fail, it's going to be about £197 every time you fail. Reason being is because to book the test again is another £62. To hire the car again and test day practice is going to be another £75. And you're also going to want to do another couple of lessons in between failing the test and the new test. So all in all, that's basically going to cost about another £200. So imagine if someone keeps failing, and every time they fail, it's going to be another £200, another £200. And also you can hire these people to find earlier test dates, because sometimes you might have failed for just like a minor thing or a major thing. So you might have failed for like a minor thing, so you think, do you know what, I can literally go and do this test next week. So there are people that you can hire. I don't know the websites, but you can find them online, and what they actually do is they're constantly on like the test booking site, so that they can try and find you one for perhaps next week or whatever. So that's a really good service. I think is worth it. I think that's like £20, but I'm not going to include that in these costs that I'm listing here. So cool, we spent £1,100 and we've passed. Now we want to think about buying the car. Editing Amber here, just to say this video is going to be split into 2 parts because it is too long for one video. So this was how to get the license, and next is going to be actually buying the car and the costs associated with that. So do subscribe and turn on post notifications so that you know when that one drops. See ya.